Philadelphia is known for many things: the history, our narrow streets, and our sports fans. But one of Philadelphia's most unique features is that we never got rid of our trolleys. Unlike many other North American cities which lost their trolleys in the mid-1900s and then replaced them with buses, SEPTA retained them throughout the many years in between. SEPTA's trolleys can mostly be found in West Philly, and this is mainly due to them being able to run underground from there to Center City. But when it comes to SEPTA, the trolleys are somewhat of a sore spot for many other residents and I. You might know why, especially if you visited Philly and walked around through Old City or Center City. But today we're going to talk about that and why it's so frustrating to think about trolleys in Philadelphia. So if you're walking around Philadelphia or in any neighborhood in Philly that's east of the Schuylkill River, you might come across some trolley tracks and you must think, Philly is such a cool city. They have trolleys still and they run all over the city. This is so cool that they've actually saved them. I hope to see one go by soon. Well, you'll kind of be sorry and disappointed that you even thought that in the first place, because there are a lot of lines in Philly that don't run anymore, and this is kind of weird for an American city. Because when it comes to light rail, trolleys, trams, or streetcars, most American cities are actually trying to run more of them nowadays, even if they aren't debatably the most useful thing in the world. But Philadelphia is different in this regard, mainly because over the last 30 years, SEPTA has not done that. They have not built new rail infrastructure, they have only taken away. You see, the reason why it's hard to look at trolley infrastructure in Philadelphia is because you can actually see the systematic destruction of infrastructure happening in real time. A lot of the trolley infrastructure around the city is just not used anymore. Anything east of the Schuylkill River is basically not used except for the 15. I think the worst part about some of this is actually SEPTA has rehabbed some of the trolley infrastructure, the tracks and the wires, but then they never used it. There's an entire section through Chestnut Hill that was fixed in 2008, but they never ran any trolleys on it. So it's super frustrating to see all of the stuff just there and just nothing happens to it. Here's a map of all the trolley tracks in Philadelphia in 1990. And here's what it looks like nowadays. Everything marked in red is either not usable or doesn't exist anymore. Now, aside from this being the United States and just terrible decisions being made when it comes to transit, why would you possibly get rid of trolley routes in the 90s? Aside from SEPTA making extremely dumb decisions, SEPTA was also a very underfunded agency for a long time, and in the 80s and 90s that was the case. So one of the issues they were always having with the trolleys is that back in the 1970s there was a huge fire in one of the trolley depots that knocked out most of their rolling stock. Now, in any other sane country or city, most of these would have gotten replaced within a decade. But since SEPTA was extremely underfunded in the 80s and 90s, they had to make some decisions. The most logical answer was to keep all of the trolleys on the West Philly section where they could all run into the Center City Tunnel and cut all the other ones that couldn't. Most of the trolleys that ran east of the Schuylkill, especially the 23, did not have dedicated lanes nor a tunnel to run through to avoid cars. So replacing them with a bus was not that terrible of an idea, especially if a parked car was parked in the trolley right of way. And for the route that ran through Center City, it's replaced with two buses nowadays, the 23 and the 45. The most frustrating thing is how the trolleys and other SEPTA projects get no funding while highways like 95 constantly get work and money thrown at them by the federal government. This is unanimous with a lot of US infrastructure, but it's just incredibly frustrating to actually see stuff decaying away in Center City, where there would be amazing use for an LRT route or something. But on the lists of things to do, I think this is a pretty low thing that SEPTA should focus on. Not that I always agree with SEPTA management, I have a lot of issues, see this video here, but I think that trolleys through Center City and other parts of Philadelphia are definitely a lower issue on the totem pole that they should focus on. Even though these old routes shouldn't be focused on, I do think that there are better places for trolleys or light rail lines in Philadelphia, but that requires another video. What will be interesting is when SEPTA implements the trolley modernization project, which will turn most trolley lines into light rail lines. The trolley modernization project will also fix one of the biggest issues with SEPTA's trolleys, the K-cars, which is that they have high floors and not much space inside of them if you want to bring a bike or something else. The newer K-cars, which were built in the 80s, are actually not accessible at all, and what's even funnier is that the older PCCs that were built in the 40s that got rebuilt in the early 2000s are actually more accessible because they have a wheelchair lift. But the whole accessibility aspect is going to be fixed with the modernization project. Not only will you have level boarding, but you'll also have multi-segmented vehicles like modern light rail. But when it comes to restoring the lines that we talked about earlier that were canceled in the 90s, I think that trolleys might not be the best solution. I think that actually the best solution would be a cousin of the trolley, which is the trolley bus. Trolley buses would be the best option for Center City because not only are they electric and run on overhead wires, but they can also get around cars that would be parked in the right-of-way of the trolley. It also helps that SEPTA has their own fleet of trolley buses. Here in Philadelphia we call them trackless trolleys, but they're the same thing. But the ability to get around a parked car is insanely important, especially if you're running through Center City. And if we were to reinstate the 23 trolley, which runs through Center City, you would definitely need this ability. It also helps that the trolley buses and the normal trolleys run on the same DC voltages, so it's a very easy switchover. You would just need to redo the wires. It's just so frustrating to see the old trolley tracks unused and realizing that we used to have a better transportation option in the past and we don't have it anymore. And in a future where we need to continue to care about our carbon emissions, having these electric options like trolley buses or trolleys are going to be incredibly important for moving forward. With SEPTA hopefully doing the trolley modernization soon, I hope that they'll also look at other options for the rest of the city, because the least that they could do is just bringing back what we had before. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the merch below for the holidays maybe, and thanks to my Patreons for always keeping these ad-free and just me getting these out on time. Happy holidays.